Whites are special. We're part Neanderthal.
I'm white, and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive for any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. If I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do the show live every Wednesday. Wednesday, right? At 7 p.m. Pacific right here on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. Make sure you're following this on your favorite podcatcher. And if you have several podcatchers on your phone, fucking follow it on all the podcatchers on your phone. If one came on your phone, like if you have an Apple phone, right, and you don't want to use Apple Podcasts, but you have it, just follow us on there anyway, because you can't delete that shit from your phone because Apple won't let you. You can support this project at echoplexmedia.com. Click the support tab. Always appreciate cash money donations, but obviously there are monthly subscriptions, which are cash money every month. There's merch. There's I don't know, you can email, send moral support, share the show with your friends, share it with your enemies, share it with that one uncle that comes to family gatherings that just wants to tell you everything about Jordan Peterson. I'm producer Dave, and you can find me on Grindr.
Sorry, my mixer was off. I am HK Perrin. You can find me on Mastodon at hperrin at port87.social. Also, I think more people should support us by doing fan art of us.
Oh, I don't want people drawing pictures of me. My God. I don't know. Yeah, if you do good fan art of us, though, we'll make a t-shirt out of it. Shit, if you bad fan art of us, we'll make a t-shirt out of it. If you write a fanfic comic about the adventures of Dave and HK in the fucking marketplace of ideas, that would be very funny.
We could print the fanfic script on a t-shirt.
I guess so. But the printing isn't so good that little tiny writing shows up so that people could, but they'd be like, what's that say? You'd be like, I don't know. You'll have to look at my webcomic. So we're going to go back to one of the fucking things that we fucking end up talking about eventually. And also this came up on my feed and I was like, shit, Charles Murray's still alive. So this is Charles Murray with John Stossel. They're going to talk about race and IQ, government welfare and crime. This is going to be fucking tragic. But that's the way that it goes. You know, a couple weeks ago, or was it last week, we gave you that cool shit about Bashar, the alien channeling shit. Now, if you just found it because of the Bashar stuff, well, now you're probably going to unfind the podcast. You know what I mean? Like, not this crap. Well, here we. By the way, this topic did. This wasn't our. This isn't the exact people, but this topic did produce the best name of any of our episodes ever. It was "Who Boffed the Neanderthal" with Sam and Ezra. That was great.
Yep,
that was a great one. We'll maybe 1 week we'll phone it in for the first segment of the show and just rerun that. And Well, whatever. Here's welfare, race and IQ, and crime, and other forbidden topics with one of the most prolific people in the world who you can't escape, Charles Murray.
Yep.
And this is John Stossel. I think he used to be on like one of those news magazine shows. Sorry.
We're here to shut down the white supremacist Charles Murray. Is that right?
Many people hate this man. They call Charles Murray dangerous. Why? Because he wrote this book, which includes research into IQ differences.
That's not exactly why, though. It's because he refuses to admit that that book is fucking wrong, and it disproves itself.
Well, as we heard before too, it's not just the book; it's that he works at these think tanks and has these policy ideas that like dovetail pretty nicely with the book. I don't want to go over this stuff. Like, we're 15 seconds into the show, so
yeah, like the guy's about as white supremacist as you could get.
Groups.
Charles Murray, get out of town! By any means necessary, shut him down!
But the activist's reflexive anger obscures the fact that Murray's not a white supremacist. He's a thoughtful researcher. He's published more than a dozen.
He argues that whites are the supreme race. Isn't that like literally the definition of white supremacist?
So that's not the argument that he makes in any of the books, but the policy prescriptions that he puts out there would tend to disproportionately disadvantage people of color.
All right, so he makes the argument that whites on average have a higher IQ than blacks and various other races. But you're right. He doesn't put white as the top race. So I guess he's not technically a white supremacist.
Of happiness and good government influence the way I think about government. It's about how...
But yeah, he's a white supremacist.
Peace Corps volunteer in Thailand. He saw how government aid made people dependent and even unhappy.
They destroyed the ability of that village to run its own affairs. They weren't as united. They didn't function as a community. I saw what government looks like from Bangkok and how it looks to the villager, and it's the same as in the United States.
Where billions more is being spent on government welfare programs, and more Americans become dependent on government.
Aren't you upset?
I'm deeply depressed.
Well, that's good.
It's worse than that. I don't see a way back out.
So why are you smiling?
Because what else am I going to do?
Americans becoming dependent on government is the theme of Murray's best-selling book, Losing Ground. Losing Ground influenced presidents.
The scholarly work of Charles Murray.
Presidents from both parties.
I think he did the country a great service.
Bill
Oh,
Clinton
yikes.
then passed welfare reform.
No one wants to change the welfare system as badly as those who are trapped in it.
But today's activists ignore
Right, but the change that they want isn't the Charles Murray version of change. They want...
These students at Vermont's expensive Middlebury College stopped Murray from speaking. They consider his ideas too dangerous to even let people hear them. I think it's important to hear what people like him say.
Well, of course you do.
More than an hour.
Middlebury, what did you think?
I was shocked.
Too dangerous to let people hear them and too dangerous to platform them, I feel like are different things, right?
Right. I mean, like, again, when it gets into this, like, whose free expression is valuable, and in this case, they think some old guy, his free expression is more valuable.
Some old racist.
Yeah, than the students at the school, right? The customers essentially for the school.
Yep.
I'm smiling because I was shocked, but not scared. Not, oh dear, what's going to happen? I'm standing up in front of the crowd, and they're all chanting and chanting and chanting, but I don't really think that anybody's going to rush the stage, and they didn't. And so that was a situation I'd been in before. I'd had protests and people chanting at speeches. What I did not have any other time after we left the stage and went down to...
Why would he mention it if he didn't think that anyone was going to rush the stage and no one rushed the stage? Why mention that then?
Maybe that's going to be not the thing that I'm going to quibble with him about on this,
okay.
Probably.
Video were people banging on the walls and trying to get into the room, trying to get through the door. And all at once I said, this is no fun. And then the day ended with us walking out to go to the car. By we, I mean Bill Berger, who was one of the administrators who was running the event, and Allison Stanger, the professor who was moderating my appearance. And we come out the door, and we have two security guys, Middlebury security guys, but just two. And there's a mob out there with some really big guys that didn't look like Middlebury students to me, who are standing.
Does Middlebury only allow people of a certain size to be students there? What do you mean? I think he means black.
Yep.
I think he means black. I'm not sure.
That is exactly what he means.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think he means black. Maybe Samoan.
I'm 100% sure.
Maybe Samoan, because those are sometimes some big boys too.
Between us and where we have to go. And you suddenly realized you didn't have the option of just standing there or going back in the building, which would have been craven. So we just pushed ahead. And at that point, I'm
going to guess no one attacked you.
Remember saying to myself, do not fall down. Do not go to the ground, because that felt like a really bad idea.
What might have happened?
Well, but I mean,
pterodactyls.
Falling, I mean, I don't know, falling down sucks. It's embarrassing. You might hit your head. You might sprain your wrist. I mean, I'm getting older, right? I don't want to fall down either.
I mean, the implication is that he was surrounded by violent thugs who were going to beat him up if he fell down. But like, really, the actual danger is pterodactyls, because if you fall down, you're in a prone position, and pterodactyls can come and attack you.
Like more horizontal surface area.
Yeah. Yeah, for the pterodactyls to claw into.
That group just might.
Just as reasonable a fear.
Really bad idea.
What might have happened? They're not going to trample you.
I had the feeling that group just might. But remember, Allison Stanger's holding on to my elbow, not to protect herself. She's protecting me. She's leading. And she gets a concussion and strained tendons when somebody bangs into her from one direction and somebody had grabbed onto her hair from another direction. So for her, it was no fun.
Did that happen?
And in fact, she couldn't teach.
I mean, that's I don't think it didn't.
Okay.
I mean, I have no reason to believe that it didn't. There's no, there's not a, there's nobody, I haven't heard anybody say it didn't happen. But the version of events may be different, right? There may have been, who knows, because they had security guards there. He had mentioned like pushing their way through the crowd. So who knows, who knows? But it's bad that this person was injured, that somebody was injured during this. I'm not, especially if she's a professor there,
for sure.
And not like, I don't know. There's nobody, I've never heard anybody say that did not happen.
To the term because of the concussion.
They're that angry at you because you're perpetuating
a racist.
These kids had never read a word of anything I'd ever written.
How do you know that?
Yeah.
He's like, first of all, they're too big to be in the university, and they haven't read a word of my, I don't know. I think this might be incorrect. I don't know that every one of them read all of his books, but somebody there had to have read something.
Yep. Yeah, it sounds like he's just, straw manning them, saying, "Oh, they're obviously wrong because I feel like they're wrong."
It was a ginned up phenomenon that also hit a lot of other people on the right who tried to talk at colleges. My wife's theory, and I think she's right.
That wasn't a straw man, but
who tried to talk at colleges. My wife's theory, and I think she's right, is they wanted a way to get at Trump, and anybody on the right is sort of their way of expressing their anger at what's going on. So I'm not at all sure it was specifically focused on the work of Charles Murray.
Okay, so we went from they're not going to rush me, and they didn't, to, oh, but they might trample me, but they didn't, to, well, they're wrong anyway because they haven't read my work, to, now they're not even attacking me, they're just attacking Trump. I'm just in the way.
Right, right, and the fact that the person that was with him suffered injuries almost seems like an aside in all this, because that, like, I don't know, I'd spend more time on that. Be like, at that time, when I found out, when I saw that this person had been injured in this melee, it occurred to me that the temperature on this stuff is turned way up, and that's a big right. You'd think that a reasonable person would spend a little more time on that, because they do have an hour and 1 minute and 11 seconds here. So you'd think that would be, you would, even just for propaganda purposes, you would lean into that more, but who knows?
Is as portrayed by the Southern Poverty Law Center that they were going after.
The Southern Poverty Law Center calls you a white nationalist.
Yes.
Yeah, they call almost anybody a white nationalist.
No, they don't.
Like that.
Do they? I feel like they do not.
Right.
They absolutely do not do that.
But I don't know. Do they call the other two people that were there with him? Have they been referred to in that way by SPLC? I'm guessing not.
Yeah.
Man,
this guy can't take any single accountability.
White nationalists who they don't like. That outfit is so sleazy.
You say white men are intellectually, psychologically, and morally superior.
I've never said that. I've never.
But you don't have to, like, okay, first of all, they weren't, like, so we're taking John Stossel's word for, and they had quotes around it, which is really interesting, because that suggests to somebody that that's a quote from Murray, but that's actually a quote from the Southern Poverty Law Center in their article. And they probably have inferred from his body of work that this is what he believes.
Yeah.
It's so,
which he kind of makes that argument in his book.
Right at the end, right? Like when he talks about policy.
Even though it's very clear that, the data that he presents in his book shows the opposite of that argument.
Right, right. Or it has arguments against that argument in the small data set. Everybody, you got to watch Sean's video on this, by the way, on the bell curve. It's fucking a 4-hour video essay about the bell curve, and he like goes into the data, and it's pretty good. You watch it in pieces. It's 4 hours.
Said anything remotely like that. And once I had what I called editing my Southern Poverty Law Center material. And I went through and I copy edited it all, and with comments about, you really got to take out this because I never said it. Or in other cases, they have a quote, and I say, well, yeah, that quote I said, but here are the next 3 sentences you left out. Of course, nobody ever really reads that kind of thing. I put it on the AEI website. But the fact is that you have people at the Southern Poverty Law Center who are willing to lie and pull out of context, and they would be laughable.
But John Stossel just pulled like a half a sentence out of context out of the Southern Poverty Law Center article about Charles Murray and put it on the screen.
Yep.
And it's one of the reasons, and people get I've definitely had criticisms of the show that are like, hey, you just run the whole thing. And I'm like, well, the alternative is to be accused of taking everything out of context, like happened with fucking Chris Shelton when I pulled clips of what he said on trigonometry. So we got two choices.
We still get accused of it.
Right. Yeah.
We've been accused of taking taking what's his name, the Kermit the Frog guy, Jordan Peterson. We've been accused of taking Jordan Peterson out of context, and we've watched literally like hundreds of hours
at this point. During the pod and Red Light, probably hundreds of hours of him.
Yeah. I think you're right. We probably spent like a week literally of our time of our lives watching Jordan Peterson. What more context could we possibly have?
Like if I've only met a couple in the real world fans of him, and I'm like, I bet I've watched more of his shit than you have.
Yeah. They get so much attention.
And you think the kids read what the Southern Poverty Law Center writes?
I'd like to have a better grip on who it is that communicates all this stuff. But obviously, about a variety of people, and I'm one of them, the caption for me is, he believes blacks are genetically inferior to whites. The students, they don't.
Okay, that is actually what he believes, literally. Like, he argues that exact thing in his book.
Right. It's, well, intellectually inferior because of genetics. Right?
Yeah, because of genetics. He argues that blacks are genetically inferior to whites. That is his argument. If he's going to say right now that that's not his argument, then he needs to read his own goddamn book.
Wonder when the last time it was he read his own book. I read my own articles over and over again all the time looking for typos.
I do the same thing.
Investigate this. They just take it as...
Do you believe that blacks are intellectually inferior?
I bridle at the word inferior. Yeah, what do I believe? In the same sense that I believe that the Battle of Gettysburg occurred, it is that if you give mental tests to a representative sample of whites and a representative sample of blacks, that there will be about a 1 standard deviation difference, which amounts to about 15 IQ points between those scores.
That is his long-winded way of saying yes, and the answer is no.
Well,
I mean, the answer to that specific question is yes, because he does believe that, but the answer to the actual question, are blacks intellectually inferior to whites, is no.
It's they perform, in the aggregate, tend to perform worse on this particular set of standardized tests.
Yes, and different populations of the same race that have different socioeconomic circumstances perform differently to their other populations of the same exact race in his book. So it's like, there you go. It's not about race. It's about socioeconomic status.
Translate that into people being inferior and superior is idiotic. Are you really under the impression that someone who has an IQ that's 20 points lower than yours feels inferior to you? I know lots of people out near my home.
I don't actually know people who would tell me their IQ. That's the problem here. Is I've just met very few people, like in the wild or whatever, who would bring up their IQ. I've heard people talk about it, but they're talking about like online IQ tests and shit. And the problem there is that online IQ test isn't really a test. It's a data scraping information. They're looking for your information about you that has nothing to do with the results of the test. So they're inclined to they tell you that you're a genius, so that you tell your friends, look, I'm a genius, and then your friends go give their fucking personal information to the test. Like,
yep. Yeah. I do know a few people who would actually tell me their IQ test scores. And I don't really hang out with them because they're not the kind of people that generally are fun to hang out with.
Yeah. They maybe have do well on an IQ test, but if you gave them some sort of emotional intelligence test, they might not do so great. Not great at parties.
Yep.
Who I'm sure of two things. One, they can do all sorts of things that are really important to my life that I can't do, such as fix the plumbing, get my electrical circuits working correctly.
Whoa, he's saying that. Whoa. Okay, so this is actually an indictment of the IQ test as a measure of the ability to solve problems. Because fixing your plumbing, that's a problem-solving exercise, right? If it's something where you're trying to diagnose something, that's a problem-solving exercise. And electrician? Do you know how thoughtful and mindful you need to be while you're working with like fucking power?
Yep.
You zap yourself.
Something that can kill you if you touch the wrong thing.
Right. Dummies.
Be stuck if they weren't around. And the second thing is, I am quite confident that they don't look at me and think that they are inferior to me in any way. I am somewhat different than them in my skill set and in my lifestyle.
I'm not sure anyone is inferior to Charles Murray.
So what?
You don't think they look at you and say, oh, he's incompetent. These intellectuals can't do anything.
Oh, of course they say that. But of course they're being
I don't think people say he's incompetent. They say he's a piece of shit.
That when they look at me and they roll their eyes when I'm so happy that they've come out and fixed something that if I were a competent male, I could have fixed myself. But they don't think of that as being anything more than a quirk. Suppose that they would have trouble.
I don't think any plumber is like rolling their eyes at one of their customers going like, why couldn't you do this? Like they went to school for that. Of course, like not everyone is going to be a plumber.
Well, if it's something simple that you can do and you got a good plumber, maybe they'll be like, hey, next time this happens, actually, you could probably fix it. Let me show you how to do it. If it's like easy.
Sure. But even then, like some people just aren't comfortable with doing that. And that's totally fine.
Right. But also,
you don't have to be.
Also, like, again, this just belies like the point that he thinks he's making, because these things are skills that require critical thinking, learning, all the things that this stupid test is supposed to give you information about. And if you think those people wouldn't perform well in these standardized tests, first of all, he's probably wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, I bet an electrician or a plumber, if you gave him, I don't even know what the current version of an IQ test looks like, but I bet they'd perform pretty fucking well, actually, on these. You know what I'm saying?
Probably, yeah.
I mean, I don't know, but
yeah, like it's funny that he actually picked jobs that are like not like a super easy job to learn.
Right.
Like he could have picked like burger flipper, and it's like, sure, you know, someone who would colloquially qualify as like stupid, you know, someone who's not too bright can be a burger flipper, yeah. But probably someone who's stupid wouldn't make a good plumber.
Right. And the other thing about that is like, you don't even know like the person flipping burgers. I mean, maybe they're in a band and they're just doing that job to make money so that they can fucking, you know, because it's like not a whole lot of responsibility or whatever. And they really want to focus on their band. And so they're like, I'm just going to do this because it's easy and make my $20 an hour and fucking, you know, fucking go play my music.
Like I chose my words carefully because I didn't want to imply that anyone flipping burgers is stupid. I wanted to like.
So I think we're getting into the weeds here. So I want to like focus on what this guy's saying, if we can.
Advanced calculus. So what? You know, in terms of evaluating them as a human being.
This all starts with your book, The Bell Curve.
I mean, an electrician might actually be pretty good at advanced calculus.
Distribution of IQ. And whites are, as you say, a standard deviation ahead. But I'm told the tests are biased.
Well, that falls in the category of this huge gap between what is known scientifically and what the elite conventional wisdom is. Because you're right, the elite conventional wisdom is the tests are biased. That has been studied to a fare thee well. And I'm not talking about 6 studies say that they are.
Can we pause it for a second? Because we got to remember this, like the data he's talking about. When did the bell curve come out? Like the early 90s, I think?
Yes, I think 1995 or 6 or something like that.
Okay, and the data that he covered in that book was already outdated. It was already decades old. And now it's even more decades old. Now it's, rather than being, 3 decades old, it's like 6 decades old. So this data is very old, and it is based on tests that were proven to be biased.
Well, so one of the easiest example I can think of, there was one of the tests on one of the questions on an IQ test in the 60s or 70s was, what is a ruby? What
color is ruby?
No, what is a ruby? I'm not even kidding. What is ruby?
What is ruby?
What is a ruby? And like that was a popular name for a black girl at the time. So like a black kid might be like, that's my sister. Right? Because also they, somebody poor might not know what the fuck all the different precious gems are or whatever. So it wouldn't even necessarily tack on to race specifically, but the fact that that was a very common girl's name for young black girls at the time, fucking. That's why these tests. That's why I don't think you can make a test. I'm of the opinion you're not going to make a test to fucking figure out how fucking smart somebody is. I don't think it's gonna. I just don't think it works. I think it's.
I don't think you can either. Like you can make a test that determines how good someone is at taking that test, and like sometimes like it applies really well if you're talking about like knowledge. You can test someone's knowledge with a test, but you can't really test someone's intelligence. Especially by asking knowledge question like what is Ruby?
Right. And
if you ask that questions like that, you're gonna get someone who has been exposed to more information is going to score higher. That doesn't mean they're smarter. Like your test might, you might say, oh, this test measures your intelligence, but it fucking doesn't.
Right, because I mean, the best of my ability to determine what intelligence is, it's like the ability to adapt and solve new problems. And and I don't know how you even test for that, because if somebody's able to adapt and solve a new problem, it might take them months to do it, but they were adaptable and they solved a new problem, and maybe the problem was fucking hard, and you're not gonna figure that out about them in a fucking 4-hour sit down with a piece of paper.
Yep. And also the idea that like intelligence is something that is like that is good for everyone to have, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is bad. Like you need people who aren't good at adapting to new situations, because that means, they can do the kind of labor that would make someone who is more intelligent want to move on, and they can probably do it well, and that is a virtue,
Are biased, and 10 studies say that they aren't. I say I can point to 100 studies that were unable to find any evidence of bias, versus virtually none that have.
But yeah, also that that really depends on your definition of intelligence. I think yours is a good definition.
What did Charles Murray just say?
Okay.
We're going to go back here.
100 studies that 10 studies say that they aren't. I say I can point to 100 studies that were unable to find any evidence of bias, versus virtually none that have any empirical reason for saying they're biased.
But he's just deciding what to point at, right?
But also, you just went over one that's so clearly biased. Like, how could you deny that?
Well, the other thing is that I think that for the most part, I think that the fields of cognition have moved on from this question in a lot of ways, right? So we're not getting new information about this, because just like they've moved on from phrenology, right? I think that there's not going to be a lot of new studies on this. I think the fix is in on this.
Yeah, if you look at modern IQ tests, they're completely different than IQ tests that were in the 50s. Modern IQ tests are mostly about pattern recognition and spatial reasoning, and IQ tests from the 50s, like you were saying, are just literally knowledge questions.
Stand by it today. Blacks, on average, have a lower IQ.
Blacks, on average, have a lower IQ than whites. East Asians, on average, have a higher IQ than whites. Ashkenazi Jews have higher IQs than Gentile whites.
I feel like that little smile that he gave when he was talking about East Asians have a higher IQ than whites is his haha, try and call me racist now.
Right. Also, it's just, I don't like the idea that you have an IQ. I think there's just this is the score that you got on a particular set of tests on a particular day is a more accurate way to discuss it anyway.
Yep.
Hierarchy of groups and their mean IQs, whites are not at the top. We are probably number 3 or number 4.
The New York Times Magazine's response to this is to call you the most dangerous conservative. You said you were surprised how fierce the attacks were. Why were you surprised?
Well, this just goes to show how out of touch I was when we were writing it. By the way, people who haven't read the bell curve should understand we're talking about chapter 13. So what went on in the 12 preceding chapters? The 12 preceding chapters were talking about the role of IQ in all sorts of outcomes in life, from income to education to child rearing and so forth. And we said at the beginning of all those chapters,
I feel like he's got the cart pushing the horse on that one.
Well, he didn't finish what he was saying yet, so
sort of take the whole race issue out of the conversation. Let's just look at a sample of non-Latino whites. And here's why IQ is important.
Normal people.
So we get to chapter 13. I thought Dick Herrnstein, my co-author, and I did a beautiful job on that chapter. I thought we said to the reader, people run screaming from the room if you talk about black and white differences in IQ, and actually there's no reason to do that. You can look at all the facts squarely in the face, and this is not something that should cause you to lose sleep at night. It's not a big deal.
Why is it not a big deal?
Because you judge other people as individuals, not as members of groups.
Well, then why did you even do the research that you did?
Supposedly, this
Research.
society. That is the ideal. And if we sit down across from each other and you are black, I can't assume that you're not as smart as I am. And if you sit down across from me and you're Asian, I can't assume that I'm not as smart as you are. I've got to talk to you and deal with you as an individual.
And then I'll determine who's the smart one because I'm in charge of that. Like, this is such a weird thing. You like, okay, so like, I'm gonna like, I've been on a couple like kind of casual dates recently because I've been like trying to like get people to stop accusing me in chat during red light of needing to go to horny jail. So I've had a few dates and I'm not like thinking like, am I smarter than this person? I'm like who thinks that? Like who does like
Charles Murray, apparently.
If you do that, group means in something like IQ are just as meaningless as group means in something like fast twitch muscles. Which
no,
boy,
the blacks be running.
The fact that I don't think there's been a white winner of the 100-yard dash in the Olympics for a zillion years. Not quite literally that, but close. You don't judge people by what color they are in the starting block of the race. You judge them by how it ends up.
But also, if you know what, this is actually kind of a good a thing to talk about because that doesn't make that person a better athlete maybe than the person who came in fourth, right? Maybe the person who came in fourth can do more push-ups or, you know, can if they, you know, they're not shot putters or whatever, but if you made them do the shot put, maybe the person who came in sixth is going to be the best at the shot put or whatever. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is actually a really good place to kind of put a marker down because again, this is like, well, this is the fastest person, but they may not be the best athlete. And this is like a good kind of analog for like the point that I try to make about this is like these people, you know, somebody's just better at this fucking test than someone else.
And it could be that different circumstances would have led that fourth place runner to finish first, you know?
Right. Just getting over a cold.
Maybe they didn't have access to a good training facility. And if they had, they would have been a better runner.
Other things like, you don't not go to the Olympics because you have cold, right? It's just any number of things, right? It's like that day, that race. It's just like how we say, like for like the Super Bowl, either team could win because it's sure this team had a better record and seems to have better athletic players, but any number of circumstances could combine to make the underdog win.
Yep.
If you treat people as individuals, most of the problems go away.
But it's generally forbidden to even talk about, or study racial differences. And the sprinters.
It's literally not. It's just super racist to lie about it.
Well, and the other problem is that I just think this is like just so hard to quantify. It seems like some people just want there to be a test that tells, like, I don't even know what the motivation is here. I'm super confused, like, as to what if I was to like remove like this is probably just phrenology and people are just trying to, you know, say that black people are dumb, which is, I think, generally the impetus for all this. But if you say that that's not the case, then what's the reason to do all this, right? Is it?
Yep.
Oh man,
quoted saying, you thought people would say, it's about time we're talking about these issues that have been swept under the rug.
Yep.
And I interviewed you for 2020 and thought, yeah, we ought to discuss these issues because people whisper about them and that's not good.
And they think it's a lot worse than it is. However, I had to revisit this just a couple of years ago after the Black Lives Matter thing. And the most recent book I wrote was called Facing Reality. And it was two truths about race in America and having to do with crime rates and having to do with IQ. And the reason I felt compelled to do that was it is not the case that thousands of black men are being shot by cops at random. In fact, the numbers are, you're talking very small numbers. And if they say, oh, but more blacks are shot than whites, people have got to come to grips with the fact that the people who are committing the crimes, there's a racial differential.
But like, for example, when and this is all self-reporting, but you would figure the same set of biases would be in place no matter who you are. When it's drugs, for example, cocaine use, I think specifically was one of the things where we find that white folks tend to use cocaine at the same rate as black folks, but black folks are more likely to be arrested for it. And then if they're arrested, they're more likely to get harsher sentences for it.
Yep.
So what's...
and a lot of people talk about theft being a big issue, like when they talk about looting. But like the largest form of theft in the United States is wage theft.
Right,
which is not something that's like, prevalent in bad neighborhoods.
But that's a guy in a tie doing it, HK.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the largest set of criminals in the United States are people who run businesses. So if you meet some random guy on the street and then you meet a CEO, it is more likely that the CEO is a criminal.
Well, everyone's a criminal. Everybody breaks laws like regularly, right? But I know what you're saying. And it's not, it's just in sheer dollars, right? There's more wage theft happening than there is like retail theft or any other kind of theft. Yeah.
Yep.
So this is a case where group outcomes did become important, not because people like me were saying something, but because Microsoft executives and the Black Lives Matter people and the evening news.
Here's another problem impacting black people and other people of color: systemic racism.
And everybody else was saying,
wait, I'd like to, well, thanks. That was weird. That was a weird cut. Just like, here's some guy. What did he say? I'm not going to look it up, but that's weird.
In this society on the basis of evidence that simply ignored these group differences in IQ and in crime rates. And so I figured I did not have the option of sitting back and not.
But wait a minute, this is also suggesting that people who are less intelligent are more likely to commit a crime. And I'm not sure that that tracks, because I think a lot of people who are like smart or whatever probably think they can fucking get away with it. So they be criming.
Yeah. And probably a lot of people who are smart do get away with it. For example, wage theft is rarely prosecuted despite being the biggest form of theft in the United States.
Writing anything. Facing Reality does not have a dedication. It does not have any acknowledgments. I wanted to keep my friends and colleagues as segregated from any identification with this as I could, because I thought that book would raise a ruckus. It didn't.
When I talked to you for 2020, much like we are now, I thought in the 15 minutes at the time we had for stories on 2020, we might have a serious discussion. But then I was disappointed. They decided, no, we can't. Even then, long before Black Lives Matter, we don't want to put this on. And I reluctantly called you and told you, expecting you to be very upset, because we had a big audience then. But you just said, it's just as well. This doesn't make anyone happy.
And it wasn't the point of the book. The point of the book, of the bell curve, was that IQ has become really important in explaining a variety of phenomena in this country. A theme I return to at Coming Apart 20-odd years later, because a lot of the polarization and the segregation and the elite attitudes toward things have been driven by the way that over the course of the 20th century, the whole social structure of the United States has been affected by the increasing importance of IQ in the economy. That's the point.
And it's more important now because
it's worth a lot more money to be really smart now than it used to be. If you go back to the 1920s and you're a lawyer,
probably, but it's worth even more money to have money
in the town.
Right. This is also like, so he's like blurring the line here again between like the results of this test and like whether or not somebody can, adapt and solve new problems, right? I imagine he's going to bring up like software engineering and coding and all that. And I'm not sure that necessarily everybody who does that is going to perform well in these standardized tests. They may, as a group, they may perform a little better, but maybe the best coder in your office bombs the test. Who knows, right? Because it's just the test is just like a series of fucking tests that's given to somebody on any given day at any given time, and it's just so arbitrary. And the connection that gets made that I don't think is, that I think needs to be proven, or, that they haven't done any good job proving, is the connection between the result of this particular test and whether or not somebody is smart. That's where I think the break is. Because it's just like, it's just an answer to how well you did on a test. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. A test that purports to measure intelligence, but as we've discussed, certainly in the 50s, they did no such thing. And now I would probably say that they're closer, but like you said, I don't think it's possible to make a test that accurately measures someone's intelligence.
Right, because it's whoever's making the test is deciding what properties of somebody's thinking determine intelligence, essentially.
Yeah.
Town you live in, you're in the upper middle class, but you aren't rich because you can charge lawyers fees for doing wills and minor legal things. If you have exactly the same level of ability as a lawyer now, if you are doing multinational deals, you can be worth a commission of millions of dollars putting together these extremely complex things. That happened not just in the law, it happened in advertising, it happened in the IT industry, obviously. And people have gotten rich because they have high IQ in a way now that didn't happen in 1900. Another aspect of it is that, guess what? You had an elite that was increasingly convinced of its own superiority. Because you've contributed to that in a dramatic way.
Yep.
That's like his project, is that this elite is better than other people or whatever. They're just more intelligent. I'm sorry.
Inherently better.
Right. Not
because of genetics.
Right. Not because of advantages. Not because of even a combination of things. Generally, he says this is. He doesn't.
Yeah. Look, I started out with a $3 million inheritance because I'm so intelligent because of my genetics.
Right, because my parents passed on their intelligence, which they used to build that wealth, obviously. Just a coinkydink.
Set of people who really do think that having a high IQ is a big deal in terms of your human worth are people with really high IQs, especially in academia. And
but he's wrong. That's who fucking panned him, was academia. He got panned in academia. So, I mean, I don't think so. I think this crotchety old professor that, there's a stereotype of, I think that person's just a crotchety old professor who thinks they're better than you because they're a crotchety old professor because of status that they've achieved. I'm not sure that they necessarily think it's because of their performance on a test.
When they get up in the morning, they're comparing themselves to their colleagues. Am I as smart as that guy? And they really do look down.
No, normal people don't do that.
Like, I think, yeah, I don't think I think you just like success in academia is more as like you say, sometimes even about software engineering. I think success in academia, if you're better at it, it's because you're better at working with and interacting with your coworkers and other staff and with your students and stuff. That's generally how you move up the ladder. It's not by, being a 1.5% smarter than the next person. That's stupid.
Yeah. Like, I've literally never wondered about my colleagues, like, oh, I wonder if I'm smarter than them. Like, I've wondered if I'm as good an engineer as them.
But that's different.
Because that's a question that actually matters.
Right. And that's everything from like work ethic to knowledge of the programming language you're using, and the ability to like work with other people and learn from other people when you have your deficits, so that you can like basically fill those holes in your ability because you've learned from someone else. Those are all the things that make you like good at most jobs, actually.
Yeah, like even if I considered myself like a great engineer in some aspects, I'm not going to be as good as someone else who might have like, not as good as me in those aspects, but better than me in other aspects. So like when you're looking for like at your coworkers and like you're wondering how well you'll do, what you want is a diverse set of people, right?
Sure. With different strengths and, dare I say, weaknesses. Yeah.
Yep.
They are. And that attitude of looking down at the yokels is palpable now in a way that in 1950 would not have happened, because it was the more
elites didn't look down at the poor in 1950. Did you know that?
Obviously.
And we called these intellectuals long hairs, and they were kind of objects.
How old was he in 1950?
104.
That flipped. So that's just a couple of examples of why this is so important to what's gone on.
But in reality, was he
I don't know.
Was he like one?
I don't know.
Okay.
Only read the bell curve, and it wasn't easy because I was influenced by your previous work in Pursuit of Happiness and Good Government. This was jaw-dropping for me. I'd been a consumer reporter. I was starting to
I've been told he was 11.
Solutions. I was
I doubt he really knew what was going on socioeconomically.
Oh my God, this is it. This explains so much I haven't understood before. And one example, you write about your time with the Peace Corps in Thailand. Tell us about that.
Well, you are referring to my own favorite of my books, In Pursuit.
Good.
And basically, John, I've been in the tank for you ever since you first told me that you liked that book, because I like it too, and it's not well known at all. And this is why I quit my job back in 1979, a good job. I was chief scientist of a good-sized research company, because I wanted to explore the relationship of human happiness, human flourishing, if you want to call it that, to policy. And that's the book I wanted to write. The basic idea of In Pursuit is as follows. Human flourishing, human happiness defined pretty much as Aristotle defined it, namely lasting and justified satisfaction with life as a whole. And a quick example of why this is relevant to policy. Think in terms of the basic human need for respect and self-respect. I think that is a built-in, hardwired human need. I think we all want to achieve self-respect. If you are a guy who is not the smartest guy in the world, but you work hard at a manual job, and you make money that supports a wife and children, puts food on the table and a roof over their head, historically in the United States of America, you had standing within your community that was equal to everybody else. You were being a good American, taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, even though you weren't making a lot of money. Suppose we have a social policy which has the following results. It gives that guy more money, but he also doesn't work for it. He just gets it. In what does this do to his self-respect?
Right, but why did you have to why did you just invent a scenario? Like, what is he talking about? This is an invented scenario. Like, you could fucking invent any scenario you want and fucking invent the outcome because you invented the fucking scenario.
I think what he's describing is winning the lottery, right?
You were smart enough to pick the numbers.
Yeah. Like, that's what happens when you win the lottery, yeah.
What does this do to his place in the community? Well, if he continues to support a wife and child at his manual job, it shouldn't do anything to it. But in fact, it does. Because he's less likely to do that. You know, why am I doing this?
Also, this is a really, the backdrop of this is that you, the husband, need to provide for your wife and your family, which is a very, dare I say, not a modern way to think about families, because that's not how most families are.
Job if I don't have to. So you have something that is seen usually as a good thing. We increase the money going to low-income people, and I'm saying that's not good enough. You've got to analyze how social policy is affecting the ability of people to live satisfying, meaningful lives. And In Pursuit was the result.
And you cite that Aristotle said the route to happiness was pushing hard to achieve goals. And struggling.
He said you ought to live a life of activity in accord with virtue. And by that,
so one thing that I think he's wrong about is the idea that if you give someone enough money to live on, that, you know, they're not going to work. I think that's true in some cases, but in most cases, people want to work. They want to do something. So he might be right in that, like, the guy who's doing the manual labor might quit his job when he gets a lot of money, but that doesn't mean he's not going to work. He might just go do a job that he actually wants to do, right? He might be unhappy doing the manual labor job, and really what he wants to do is build guitars.
Right.
So he's going to learn how to build a guitar and buy the equipment he needs to build guitars and buy the wood and all the parts and everything, and he's going to start building guitars. And guess what? Now, instead of someone like pulling a lever all day, we've got someone building guitars.
Right. And the other thing is, like, I mean, if somebody just doesn't want to work, fucking who cares? There's plenty of fucking resources, you know, in like the United States. Like, if somebody doesn't want to work, fucking who cares? Like, let them not work. What's it to me? What's it to you? What's it to Charles Murray?
Yeah, like, maybe don't give them like enough money to go out and buy a new Xbox Series X every week. But, like, you know, they should have enough money to do some basic things. Maybe go to a movie every week. Right.
And if the income is such that they could save money and buy a gaming console and they want to play video games, fucking okay. So you fucking, that's fine too. Like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when you're a kid and you have to save up your allowance to buy something.
Right. And what if you're not really working for that allowance, right? What if they're like, oh, clean the living room, and you clean the living room, but then parents have to go through because you're a kid and you don't really know how to fucking clean the living room, maybe to the standard that your parents would like for their dinner party. They got to go re-clean the living room after you did it. But it's like, it's like, this is hella dumb, because like all the studies on UBI show that it has negligible effect on people's productivity, right? If there's an effect, there's some indication that it actually increases people's productivity, because like you said, they may give them some freedom to do something they're more interested in, therefore they're going to probably be more productive at it because they're more interested in it. And for some people, they're just going to fucking not do anything, and that's fucking fine with me. I don't give a shit.
Like, imagine a world where people get to do what they want.
Right. I mean, there's a way in which,
instead of being miserable all the time.
I mean, there's a way in which there's some stuff that, you know, just needs to get done, but that would also drive up the wages for jobs that people don't want. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. But like, usually there are people that want to do things. Like, there are people out there who it is their life's passion to figure out how to turn like sewage into drinking water. And like, you know, they love going to those plants and doing that job. And, you know, for them, cool, great. But like, maybe for the job of like actually going down into the sewer and like, fixing clogs or something, yeah, people doing those kind of jobs should make a lot of money. It shouldn't be like, yeah, you have to get covered in shit every day or you'd fucking die.
Right. If that person's other option is just not do that and be able to like have a 1-bedroom apartment, it's going to drive the wage up for that fucking that kind of that dirty, difficult job.
Yeah.
Not enough to feel good. You can feel good with drugs. I
agree. That's the first thing you said. I agree with. one more time.
Wow.
I think we're going to pull that. I'm going to pull that and put that on the soundboard.
And by that I mean it's not enough to feel good. You can feel good with drugs.
To be fair, I don't want to do drugs with Charles Murray. That would be horrible. Give him like 5 hits of acid and make him take an IQ test.
You have to have a justified reason for feeling good, and you don't have that with drugs. And also Aristotle said something that I think is so profound about human enjoyment. Human beings enjoy the exercise of their realized capacities. Why is it that J.K. Rowling still writes books? She has zero financial incentive to write.
Does she still write books?
She is realized.
Ooh, her last book, she tried to write under a fucking pseudonym, and everybody found out it was her. And there was a pretty racist depiction of some of the characters in the book that sort of everybody thought you were like, oh, that's an anti-Semitic depiction of the characters in the book. You should look into that. This is one of the things. You're not incredibly online like I am. So
yeah, she is an absolute piece of shit. So, I hope she loses all her money.
Exercising her realized abilities. On a much lesser scale, why do I continue to write books?
Why do I continue to make videos? That's what I'm good at.
No, I don't consider I'm exercising my realized capabilities now, John. You are. I'm not.
But like, doesn't this go against what he just said?
Yeah. These two, neither of them need the money and they're both still working.
Yeah. Literally that, like he was just arguing that wouldn't happen if you just give someone money.
Right. But like they're at the point where probably through investments, they're essentially just sitting on their ass making money. Right.
Yeah.
I wonder
like he's arguing against his own. Well, I mean, this is Charles Murray. He does that all the time.
So I do wonder what they think of somebody who like day trades, right? Like what if somebody has amassed enough money that they can just do a little bit of day trading at the coffee shop? Do they think that person isn't living up to their potential? Because I would presume they're probably not living up. They could probably be doing something like more fulfilling for themselves and more valuable to their community and the world at large. But there they are sitting at Starbucks, fucking caffeinated off their ass and fucking, day trading. Like,
no.
But again, if somebody makes a bunch of money and wants to do that, I don't fucking go ahead. Like I guess it's kind of bad, but fucking whatever. That's just like one person. I don't give a shit. Like again, like what the fuck? Like what do they think? What does he think about inheritance? Does he think because by his logic here, what he's saying, maybe the government should take all your fucking money and not when you die and not let your kids inherit it. But I bet he doesn't believe that.
I would put money on that he does not believe that.
And it's fine to leave your loved ones money, although I think, I don't know how much of it.
I think there should be like a wealth cap and an inheritance cap.
Yeah, I'm with it.
My realized abilities when I'm sitting in front of that computer monitor, staring at it, typing for a minute, erasing it, going back and doing it again. And I enjoy that. That's true up and down the line. A cabinet maker.
Although I do think that both of those should be logarithmic? Like they approach 100%, but they never quite reach it.
Satisfaction. And that's at the core. You want a society in which people are given lots and lots of opportunities and incentives to learn how to do something well that they love doing.
And in Pursuit of Happiness and Good Government, you write about a model village, the pride of the government in Thailand. Cascade of projects, a fish pond, a new school building, cotton growing project, and a health clinic.
Yeah, and he was well-meaning. I knew him. I talked to him. But he sort of looked upon the villagers as these objects that he was trying to help. And the village before he...
Much like our government does for us now.
Well,
wait, what?
That's why...
Why is it looking at someone like an object to help them?
So if you're doing this kind of work, right, or if you're working for the government to try to provide services to a village, you probably have to do it somewhat dispassionately to do it effectively. And I think that he's maybe has found a way to confuse that with thinking that they're not people or that they're just like cogs in a machine. But yeah, if you want the best outcomes for like a large group of people that you're trying to provide aid to, you're going to have to, in some ways, do it dispassionately and kind of look at the statistics. But that's good. That's good, mostly.
Yeah,
most of the time. Is this working for the most people? The thing is, it's so weird because he's also, like, not for nothing, he's basing all this off of his experience as an outsider going to a village, like on the other side of the fucking world, where people's socioeconomic status is much different than his certainly was when he went there. If he had the fucking wherewithal financially to go there to do this work, right? He fucking wasn't all alms for the poor, and then all of a sudden was in Thailand doing some academic work or trying to study what's going on in a village there. And so it's like it's just crazy that that they've brought this up a couple times, and it's like, well, this is a village full of poor people and they needed help. I don't know. There's nothing. What the fuck's the problem?
Yeah.
Profound effect on me. I saw what government looks like from Bangkok and how it looks to the villager, and it's the same as in the United States, the way government looks from Washington, D.C. versus the way it looks out in a little town in Maryland where I live. What they did when they came in there was they destroyed the ability of that village to run its own affairs. And
by
that
putting a fucking clinic there and helping them learn to grow crops. I mean, the things he's describing are like helping those people, I think, would help those people determine their own fucking path, because now they have a crop that they're growing, so they have some economic activity. They have a clinic so that, like, I don't know, you don't die of fucking gangrene. Seems like it increases people's self-determination ability, not decreasing it.
Don't you remember the old proverb? Give a man to fish, destroy his entire life. Teach a man to fish, destroy his entire life. Just quit trying to help that guy.
To the quality of life in that village.
Like, why doesn't he already have a fucking pile of fish?
That is really, in microcosm, the story of what's happened in the United States.
The villagers said plainly that life in this model village got worse.
Yep. They weren't as happy as they used to be. They weren't as united. They didn't function as a community. They didn't function as families as they had.
But we're just taking your word for it based on what you believe that you saw, or what they told you, probably through like a translator. Like, what questions was he like? Did he do any academic work on this, or is this just like some anecdote that he's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no. Somebody in chat's like, did they ask why things are worse? Maybe there was a fucking hurricane fucking 3 months before he got there. Was there a natural disaster, or was there a problem with the crops? Was there, was there some violent thing imposed on them from outside that is not from the government? Like, any number of things could have been happening in conjunction with this government program, where people thought things were worse, but that the government program had little or nothing to do, or that the government program like sort of was a buttress against that made it so that, that old could be worse.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you're just taking his word for it, which that's fucking great. He was like a fucking poverty tourist, basically.
Yep.
The book that made you famous.
He obviously wants to feel superior.
Miller came before these other books, Losing Ground, which meant what it says. People who were being helped by the government were losing ground. Explain.
When I quit my job, I was not a right-wing ideologue. But at that time, I did not have a coherent political philosophy. I'd voted for Ronald Reagan. We're talking about 1981. And I had a sympathy for a lot of libertarian ideas, but I didn't think of myself as a libertarian. I'd voted for Jimmy Carter in 1976, for heaven's sakes. That's how incoherent my political views were.
Wait, what? No, that's not incoherent. Like, you could vote. Like, things were different back then. There were there were liberal Republicans and conservative Democrats and stuff. It didn't like map on, like, ideological stuff didn't map onto the parties as closely as they do now.
Yeah, and it sounds like he was just becoming right wing.
Right. I mean, what if I don't remember who ran against Carter, but what if he was just a bad candidate and nobody liked him? I mean, like, that's how people vote, is like, who do you like? Like, especially more back then, because it wasn't so, like I said, there were conservative Democrats and liberal Republicans. Like, think about the Rockefellers were liberals and they were Republicans. So I don't fucking know. I don't know why you voted. Who cares who you voted for? Fuck you.
Stuff after my years of evaluating social programs at this research company. And that was, these programs didn't work, and that they had made things worse. They had changed the lives of poor young people, and especially black poor young people, in ways that tempted them to do things in the short term that were disastrous in the long term. And so I wanted to write a book which talked about these perverse incentives and described them, and used lots of data without any interpretation. Just, here's what things looked like from 1950 to 1980, and look at the way they've gotten worse. And then I came to the chapters where I had to say what I wanted to do about it.
But between 1950 and 1980, the absolute financialization of the economy had occurred, where, like, things were just different. Like, there was less value, like he was saying, in manual labor. And so it got harder for somebody who wasn't, a professional or what they would call white collar. Yeah, it got harder for those people. But it wasn't because the government was helping blue collar workers. It was, this is stupid. This is fucking hella stupid. Like, a lot of shit changed between 1950 and 1980. Also, the tax rate. On the rich got much richer. Like, by 1980, the rich were much richer than, the gap was nothing like it is today, but it was, it was starting its way down the hill, right? Like, starting its way down the other side of the bell curve, so to speak. And
in the 1950s, the highest marginal tax rate was like in the 90%. I think it was like either 90 or a little bit above 90%.
Right. The margin, that was much higher. It was JFK who started to lower the highest marginal tax rate, and he's a big old liberal or whatever. He's also coming back from the
92%.
Yeah. JFK is also coming back from the dead. I didn't know if you know that.
It was in the course of writing those chapters that I kept finding myself saying, there are constraints on what outsiders can do that really make it difficult to get the incentives right. And I'd also read Robert Nozick by that time, the brilliant libertarian philosopher. And by the time I finished the last parts of Losing Ground, much to my surprise, I found I was a libertarian.
Because government solutions rarely work.
Yeah, I could think of thought experiments of policies that would work. For example, I had a thought experiment saying, well, suppose that we got rid of welfare altogether. Everything, lock, stock, and barrel. And I went through all of the changes in the calculations this would make of women in their expectations of men, the changes it would make in the behavior of men, the variety of other social feedback loops that would be triggered. But of course, we're never going to get rid of the system.
So I posited a thing that I want, and then worked through a fanfic, essentially, of justifications for the thing that I want. And it turns out that I was right. This is like,
imagine that.
It's backwards, right? It's so dumb. It's so dumb. My inner 2008 skeptic is coming out. Oh, you're starting with the conclusion and working your way back, are you, buddy?
I think that's called begging the question, where you basically take the conclusion that you want as one of your premises.
I'm not sure that's begging, but it's just backwards. It's like not how you figure things out. It's just fucking the car's going the wrong way.
Yeah, it's also called circular reasoning.
The car is going the wrong way, and it still has leaded gasoline because he's a libertarian.
And I could think of, guess what? Suppose we gave poor parents the money to send their children to schools of their choice. I went through in my mind and on.
But wait, that's a welfare program. It's just a welfare program he likes because it takes money away from the fucking public schools.
But of course, that at that time was impractical as well.
In Losing Ground, you have this chart pointing out the sharply rising government expenditures addressing poverty.
In that chart, you can see it had tilted upward, the line, in 1960 to 65, but then it starts to go steep. And guess when it gets even steeper? 1970 to 75, which are the years of Richard Nixon and of Gerald Ford. What happened?
Republicans increased spending.
Now do the same, but for the income of the top 1%.
And also, hold on. This doesn't even account for inflation.
You are correct. It doesn't. Wow.
I mean, I'm no graph expert. But this doesn't account for inflation.
Nope. Yeah, and then also do the same, but for income inequality.
Right, or like just
I want to see those graphs.
Put the graph next to it of what is the federal budget. Does the fucking federal budget line map closely to this line?
Yep.
Well, like that as this graph would only be useful in the context that he's trying to talk about it, is if we used percentage of the federal budget or percentage of public dollars that go toward welfare programs. This is just a raw number.
You just map also like military spending.
Right. Well, that's off to that's different. That's off to that's not like it has nothing to do with this. I don't think.
All these things would have the same graph.
Right. Because inflation.
Pretty much, and more spending, but like because we have more money.
Also, just number of people in the United States might have a fucking graph that looks kind of the same. Especially you think about 1950, that's the baby boom. You think about 1950 is the kind of the end of the baby boom, and then 20 years later, you have this increase in spending on welfare programs. Well, that's because fucking all them people born after the fucking war are now in their 20s. So I don't know what to tell you, dude.
Yep.
It's only in recent years that I have understood how that was able to happen and why it hadn't happened before.
Why?
Because in 1937, the Supreme Court said that we, the Supreme Court, consciously, explicitly, are going to say that we're siding with Alexander Hamilton in interpreting the phrase general welfare. It took the leash off. Until that decision, the government had stuck pretty close to the list of things in the Constitution that Congress was permitted to legislate on. And that one decision said no, as long as it has some relationship to the general welfare, it's okay. It didn't make that much difference in the 40s.
So what happened to our economy from 1950 to 2016, where that graph ended?
The economy got much bigger.
It got much bigger?
Yeah.
Wow, it sounds like this decision worked.
Or, well, I mean, it sounds like line go up again.
Yeah.
Oh man, you know what? Fuck this. We can't possibly do a minute more of this. I fucking hate Charles Murray so much. I'll cop to my own bias. I fucking hate Charles Murray. But the last thing that we looked at there, and I encourage people maybe on the pod to check out the video that we put out, is it's called Lying with Statistics. You could be like, the number of house cats in California went up. Well, that's just because there's more people, and some percentage of those people want a fucking house cat. Like, that doesn't have anything to do with anything. It's just fucking meow baby. Like, I don't know what to tell. There's a fucking there's more dogs too, and more people got a pet gerbil, and it's technically illegal, but maybe more people got a ferret. Just because there's more of us. There are more cars, more roads, more fucking refrigerators. Like, you could fucking do a graph of anything from 1950 to the current day, and if it involves people, it's going to go up because there's more fucking people. I don't know what total number of crimes committed is going to go up, even though the crime rate is probably, violent crime is lower. It's just total number of crimes is going to go up because there's fucking way more people. Like what the shit? Like, it doesn't matter. These are like raw numbers. It's like saying that there are, when they say, oh, there's the most homeless in California. It's like, well, yeah, but there's the most miles of road in California. There's the most housed people here. There's the most.
Yeah, there's the most people here. Like 10% of the United States lives in California.
So it's that same kind of like, sure, the statistics are correct, but you're telling a lie using them, or you're like misleading people by using them. That graph was dumb. Like it doesn't even, it didn't account for anything, any other factors.
And like trying to argue the wrong conclusions from that data. Like I could argue that like more sweaters were sold in the summer of 2023 than in the winter of 1923. Therefore, the globe is actually cooling.
Right. Yeah. We should, if we ever write a book together, we're going to write a book called Lying with Statistics. And it's just going to be it's going to be like, I would I feel like we could make it like a Mad Libs or a Choose Your Own Adventure book about lying with statistics. Because you can, you can just, if you just use raw numbers, you can say that anything is going up just because the number of fucking people is going up. It's really, really fucking dumb. What's always missing from conversations with this guy is what were you doing for work? What have you been doing for work for the last 20 years? If you remember when Ezra talked to Sam Harris, he was like, hey, this guy works for these right-wing think tanks. We can't not talk about that when we talk about this guy's work. We have to talk about him and what his project is. And they don't ever talk about, he mentioned the American Enterprise Institute, but only insofar as he wrote an article on there basically whining about what the Southern Poverty Law Center said about his work. And they weren't probably talking about his academic work. They were probably, I bet that article talks a lot about what he's done at places like the American Enterprise Institute and other think tanks. I bet they don't spend a whole lot of time on the bell curve. But I don't know. Yeah. Fuck it. Fuck that. Fuck this episode of the show, and fuck Charles Murray. And I don't know. I like you, so you can read the show out if you want.
All right. This has been the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do this show live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific right here on twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. If you want to support us, you can do that on echoplexmedia.com, or you can do it on patreon.com/echoplex or eplex.store. Go to our website to check out our other shows. And if you're listening live, stick around after the song for Red Light, where we change the color of the lights and the contents of our drinks and do whatever we feel like. And this is Boomers by Periscope.